So a couple of weeks ago, I took these golf balls and we tested them like Bryson. We soaked them in some water and Epsom salt to find the center of gravity. But the question is, well, we went through all that work. Does it really make a difference? We're gonna find out. Let's go. Hi everyone, welcome to the Mobile Clubmaker. I'm AJ, I hope you're having a wonderful day. So this is part 2. This is the conclusion of that video we did a couple weeks ago about testing golf balls and trying to figure out where the center of gravity is. Specifically, this video is really where the rubber meets the road, or where the golf ball meets the grass, because knowing what we now know from these golf balls, what does that really mean? What impact does that actually have when you're using them, when you're playing golf with them? That's what I wanted to see in this video. Okay, just a real quick review of what we did in that first video. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link down in the description below. But we took these golf balls, 3 different premium brands. I took one sleeve out of each of them, picked a couple balls from each sleeve, and we dropped the balls into a mix of Epsom salt and water so that they would float. We then sort of dropped them in repeatedly, kind of spinning them as we did it, to find where the heaviest point on the golf ball was. Where that heaviest point was would sink to the bottom. We put a mark on the opposite pole, and that gives us an indication of where the center of gravity is on those golf balls. So a golf ball like this, where the dots are kind of all over the place, indicates that, well, it's basically the center of gravity is where it should be, in the center. But a golf ball that had all of the dots, or most of the dots, sort of concentrated in one section, that indicates that this side of the golf ball, or this side, the opposite side, is heavier than the rest of the ball. So indicating maybe the center of gravity is not quite where it should be. So we're going to be doing 2 different things today. First off, we're going to be cutting into some golf balls. Okay, I'm not going to use the machete. I'm actually going to be using a PVC pipe cutter a la Rick Shields. But we're going to cut into these golf balls and see if we can tell, based off of what we've already done using the Epsom salt and water, if you can see where the core is maybe not quite in the center of the golf ball. So we're going to get the most out of round for each of these balls, the Titleist, the TaylorMade, and the Callaway, cut into them and see if we can tell, based off of where that core is oriented, where the heavy and light side is. Okay, so here is one half of the ball, and I can't see where the dots are right now, but I'm just going to be looking at where the core section is, this medium green section is, compared to where this very edge dark green section is next to the white. And I feel like when I look at this, it looks like there's more of the dark green up here on this section versus down here at the bottom. Sort of this half of the ball, I see more of that dark green than I do down here. So in theory, if I look at this, there's the dots. I'm assuming the other half would be the same way. Let's see. So here's the other half. And again, I feel like I can see here the darker green section is smaller. Here, the darker green section is definitely thicker looking. That makes me think, yeah. And there, once again, there's the dots. Okay, here's the TaylorMade ball. Let's see if we can tell anything from this. This obviously has 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, a little different design to it. And I'm trying to pick out which of these layers is maybe the thicker one versus the thinner one. I feel like maybe this looks thinner over here. That darker side looks a little bit thicker over here. And let's see. Yeah, there's the dots. If we look at the other side, again, I'm just going to spin this so I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, I didn't quite cut this one as evenly. This is a little bit off as far as not cutting right through the middle, but let's see, once again, looking at that darker side, I feel like, again, you can see this dark ring close to the outside. There's definitely more of that dark ring up here than there is down here. Yeah, and there's the dots again. Now this Callaway, again, a little bit different design here. This Callaway had the best results of the three that we looked at as far as the dots were a little bit more spread out. They were sort of more on one hemisphere of the ball than the other, but it wasn't as tightly packed. So I don't know if we'll be able to see quite the obvious indication on the inside. Let's see. Again, this one I'm having a harder time with. Maybe here? Yeah, no, where was it? It was over here. So let's look at the other side. Once again, let's see. This one I'm definitely having a harder time with. Let's see, this looks a little bit thinner on this side, so maybe I'm going to say that this is the orientation where the heavy side would be, because this maybe looks a little bit thinner. Let's look. I missed it again. I was off again. It was actually over there. So again, the ball that had the better results as far as all this went was also harder to tell where if any discrepancy was looking at the inside of the ball. Well, this really wasn't a huge surprise. The balls that had the more off-center of gravity based off of our Epsom salt and water check also turned out to be the ones where it was more obvious that the core of it was not quite in the center when we cut into the middle. So this Titleist and this TaylorMade, you could pick out visually, just looking at the inside, where that heavy and light side were going to be, what that heavy light axis was going to be looking like, and then we could check it based off of the dots. And in both these cases, I was able to pick it out. The Callaway, I was not able to pick out. And again, the Callaway had a much more consistent center of gravity when we checked it in the water and Epsom salt. And when I went to actually check it by looking at the inside, in both cases, on both halves of this ball, I was wrong in both cases. So I could not figure out, I could not tell just based on the core where that heavy and light side was. The second thing we're going to do is figure out, does any of this matter? So we're going to go to the putting green, we're going to roll a bunch of putts with these golf balls and see if we can tell any difference. So obviously, putting this video together, I'm reversing the order of how I did these tests, because once I've cut into them, I can't roll them anymore. So I already went out and rolled all these putts on the putting green. Now, how did I do that? Because I fully admit that my golf game, my putting, is not consistent enough where I would feel comfortable with the data I got just from rolling these putts, putting, and trying to pick out any differences based off of what ball I was using or what orientation I had that center of gravity in. So what I needed was a way to make sure the balls consistently rolled out at the same speed and on the same line. And what I came up with is this. Call it a modified stimp meter. Basically what we have here is just a section of PVC pipe that we cut lengthwise, we put some notches in it, and we bent it using heat to give it a little ramp, a little curve to it so we could adjust the speed based off of where we release the golf ball. We sanded down the end, again, to help the golf ball roll off the end nice and smooth. We also sanded the inside a little bit to help make sure that the golf ball was rolling nicely down the ramp and not just sort of sliding down the ramp. Put it on this little base. We put a little bit of lead tape here on the bottom just to sort of anchor it a little bit better, keep it a little bit more ballast. And this allowed us to basically put this down on the putting green and consistently release the ball from the same spot every single time and get a very consistent result. So I could simply change what golf ball I was using or the orientation of the center of gravity of that golf ball, and everything else would remain equal.
Okay, we're going to start off with these Callaways that seem pretty evenly balanced. That CG seemed to be pretty well in the center. Let's see what we get here. Okay, another Callaway. Same spot pretty much. Third Callaway again. Again, pretty evenly weighted. And that one missed just slightly. Okay, next we're going to do the Titleist. First we're going to use the ball that seems, again, pretty evenly weighted. Dots all over it. Just a little bit to the right. And again, slightly to the right. Okay. Well, now we're going to try the other Titleist that had a much more obvious weighting to one side. So here's all the dots. We're going to go ahead first. We'll just put the dots, the majority of the dots, right on top so that it's rolling end over end. Now we're going to move the dots. We're going to put the dots so the heavy side pointing to the left. See if we get anything different here, since all these putts have been missing to the right. Still out to the right again. Going to go back and use the original Titleist that was more well balanced again. And again, pretty much the exact same result. Okay, now we're going to move to the TaylorMades. First, I'm going to use the one that had the more spread out pattern, indicating that it's a more center CG ball. Oh, just slipped. Okay, next up we're going to use the other TaylorMade. This had the most obvious weighting discrepancy because most of those dots were all in that same basic area. So we'll start out with those dots right on top. Okay, let's move the dots now out to the right-hand side. See if we get any change there. Pretty hard lip out there. We can go back to the original TaylorMade now, the one that has the better CG. Okay, let's move. We'll go sort of in between. We'll put the heavy side on this TaylorMade ball sort of at, say about 10 o'clock when I release it, and see what happens there. And again, just for comparison, here's the good TaylorMade ball, or the more balanced one. And I'm just going to go back to these Callaways real quick, do another run with them. Again, these all seemed pretty even. This one had slightly more on one hemisphere than the other, but I'm just going to sort of line that up on top. And as you can see, they're pretty much all missing in the same spot, just on that right edge of the cup. Yeah, pretty much all of them. We're just going to run them all now. Here's the Titleists. This is the more even Titleist. And here's the more off-center Titleist. We'll go ahead and put that heavy side over to the right. And here's the more evenly balanced TaylorMade. And finally, here is the more off-balance TaylorMade. Again, we're going to put that heavy side pointing to the left this time. yeah, I'm really not seeing much of a difference of any kind between these balls. So there you go.
But again, once we took these out to the actual golf course and started rolling them on the green, I just couldn't find any real discernible difference between any of them, whether it was a more centered ball versus a non-centered ball, or a ball that was not centered in any different number of orientations. The end result was basically the same every time. So is this plausible? Could this possibly make some difference depending on maybe a really fast, really perfectly smooth green, or maybe if you had a robot hitting these balls? Maybe, but I would say that difference is going to be very small. So should you worry about it? Probably not. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go down below, leave a comment. If you have any thoughts about how I ran this test or any suggestions, I would love to hear those. Definitely give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And again, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon. I am on Patreon. If you want to follow me there and support me, you can find me at AJ Golf. And I'm also on Instagram. You can find me there at Mobile Clubmaker. We will see you next time. Bye.